So the purpose of this whole series I'm trying to do is to show people all the sort of creative lifestyles you can have when you really utilize the internet. So many of my friends just graduated college and are looking for a job or sitting as a secretary, and it's so depressing. And of all the people I'm talking to, you have managed to make such a really cool creative life for yourself and live on this and do this from what I can understand.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just understand how all of your different sites work together and how you do that.
Okay.
So how did this get started? Which was it with your blog?
Yeah. So in 2009, I was on a sabbatical road trip to Mexico. So my wife and I basically were on a break between career gigs, and instead of just jumping into the next opportunity, we decided to take a 6-month sabbatical to Mexico to sort of take a step back and just think about what we wanted from our lives. I'm a little older than you, so I had been working maybe for 10 years or so, and just never found satisfaction in my career. I never really enjoyed working in the corporate environment. I never felt connected to the mission of the organizations that I was working for. I never felt like my contributions were really valued, and I just had that nagging question, like, is this it? Is this all that life is about? You know, working and basically hoping for a couple of weeks of vacation and maybe to retire early with a little bit of extra money. So we took the sabbatical to really just ponder life. And while we were down in Mexico, something really cool happened. We started meeting all these people who weren't rich or retired, but somehow had figured out ways to make their careers work around their lives, to do something that they really enjoyed, and also to give them the freedom and ability to live in all kinds of places around the world while they were still working, or perhaps to take time off from work and to be able to do that on a regular basis. So as I said, these people weren't rich or retired, and that really kind of hit me over the head, because my view of life up till that point was either that you worked for a corporation, you made a decent living, it was not very risky, but you weren't very fulfilled, or maybe you were an entrepreneur and you tried to hit a home run and become really wealthy so you could retire early. So I sort of had those two extreme viewpoints, and this trip to Mexico opened my eyes to a whole other world of possibilities, things that people were doing, ways that they were living and supporting themselves that weren't one of those two. So while we were down here, about a month into the trip, I actually didn't have any plans for work. I just wanted to clear my head, but I started reading about some blogs. I found some blogs that I was interested in, and I decided to start a blog myself, mostly to chronicle our trip, partly for friends and family, and also to start sharing the stories of all these really interesting people that we met on the road. And that was in early 2009. Here we are in early 2012. It's 3 years later. I now have 3 blogs, and I earn a living entirely online. And so for the past 4 winters in a row, my wife and I have returned to Mexico to live in the winter. And over the summer, we actually spent a couple of months in Europe. And I do, while we're traveling, I just work. As long as there's an internet connection, I'm able to get my work done. So like as we're talking right now, I'm actually in Mexico in an apartment that we live in the winters here. And, you would never necessarily know that because I have internet and we're able to talk just like normal.
I'm so jealous and so inspired. That's amazing. That's actually one of the main reasons I've been trying to make this all work, was because me and my boyfriend wanted to travel next year, and he's a developer, so he can work online. And if I can pull it off, then there's nothing holding us down. So it's so interesting.
Yeah.
So how do your 3 sites work together? So you have Think Traffic, Expert Enough, and your blog.
Right. So my blog, my personal blog at CorbettBarr.com, is the one that I started while we were on the road trip. So you can go back and look in the archives, and you can see back in early 2009, I knew like zero about blogging. I wrote some really terrible intro posts, like everybody does, I think. And eventually I kind of learned along the way. I had some early successes. Basically, I was just exploring what life and career is all about and how they work together, that sort of thing. But what I learned from that was that people really struggle with getting an audience to pay attention to what they're doing online. There are millions and millions of blogs out there. Thousands of them are started every day. And a select few of them actually become popular, and the rest basically go unnoticed. You know, it's like your mom reading it or something, and that's it. So I knew that that was a problem. I had some early successes, as I mentioned. I ended up with about 500,000 people who read my blog in the first 6 months or so. So from what I learned from that, and also I kind of gave you the brief version of my history, but I actually had run a startup in Silicon Valley for the 3 years prior to taking a sabbatical. And I learned some things about creating content, viral content, and things like that as well. So I decided to start Think Traffic in about a year after I started my first blog, with the goal of helping people understand what it takes to create an online project that actually attracts an audience, that you can build a business around, and that you can hopefully contribute something meaningful to the world. Because I think there's so much garbage on the internet. You can find people are obviously just trying to scam you, take advantage of you, all that kind of stuff. So we're really focused on projects that make a difference and that matter in some way. So I started Think Traffic in 2010. I also learned from my personal blog that it's very difficult to start a blog just about you and your adventures and travel, and then to turn that into a business. I had a big audience, but it wasn't clear how to sort of start earning money from that blog exactly, and I wasn't necessarily all that motivated to do that. So I started Think Traffic partly to, as I said, to help people build an audience, and partly to help me build a business as well. And that really took off after I started it in 2010 and especially in 2011. And so that's now where the majority of my income comes from. Through Think Traffic, I sell some online courses. I have one called Traffic School, which is like a comprehensive course about how to build online audiences. I have another course called How to Start a Blog That Matters, which is a 13-week step-by-step program you can go through to start a new blog. And so those online courses bring in the majority of my income. Basically, I create a lesson plan, I tape a bunch of videos, do a bunch of written material, put that all together into an online course, and then offer it for sale. People purchase that, and then I'm able to support myself doing that. And this isn't all that novel. I actually have a number of friends and colleagues who are also bloggers who support themselves in much the same way. They choose something that they're interested in and they want to become an expert in. They carve out a little niche for themselves by building up a blog to demonstrate that expertise and to give away free content which attracts an audience. And then you create sort of a premium version for people who want to take something to the next step. And some people will be willing to pay for that. It's always a small percentage of your audience, maybe less than 1% will actually pay for the content, but that's usually enough to actually build a business around.
And so why did you choose the courses route rather than like the information products or the ebooks that a lot of bloggers do?
Well, the courses that I create, I consider information products. I think anytime you're just selling information, it's technically an information product. Instead of doing an ebook, the reason I did courses is a couple of things. First of all, with an ebook, it's basically just written material. And I find that people actually enjoy a combination of written material, video, audio, all that kind of stuff. So with a course, I'm able to tape videos. Sometimes it's me just talking to the camera. Other times it's me showing people how to do something on the computer, that sort of thing, screencasting. And so that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that with a course, you can make it very interactive. So typically with my lessons, people are able to ask me questions directly on the lesson, either in comments or through some other feedback mechanism. And then I can answer them back directly. So it's a much more interactive experience, and I think people get a lot more value from that, and then I'm therefore able to charge a little bit more for those courses than you might typically be able to with an ebook.
Okay. And how does insanely useful media play into this? Is that more of a legal thing, or?
Yeah, so I just, I started my first blog, and then I ended up starting Think Traffic, and then out of Think Traffic grew this other blog called Expert Enough, which is really sort of a case study. I wanted to create a new blog and sort of show people how that's done from the ground up. Because I have all these different projects going on, I just wanted something to kind of unify them and to say they're all part of this. So essentially my business is called Insanely Useful Media. It doesn't have any, there's not a blog attached to that or anything, but it just sort of ties together all the projects.
It's at the bottom, it's in the footer. And
Right.
Okay. And then one other question I have, because I'm so impressed by how insanely prolific you are, how many things you have going on all the time, and you're active in social media. I joke you're the first person that would talk to me on Twitter. You're really great about that, creating those connections. How do you manage your time? I heard John Morrow talked about, I took his guest blogging class about in the beginning of a blog, 80% marketing and 20% writing. I've heard a lot of different perspectives on, do you spend more of your time social networking or building your courses in your business or working on your own blog and blog frequency, things like that?
Yeah, I sometimes I work really hard and really long hours, and other times I don't. We like I said, we travel quite a bit, and so there are times like when we were in Europe for 2 months, I couldn't spend more than 4 or 5 hours a day working. The rest of the time, we wanted to be out exploring and things like that. When we're at home or we're in Mexico, sometimes I can work more. So that's one of the benefits of working for yourself. You can kind of, when the time is available, you can work hard. Other times you can slack off a little bit. But I found personally that I'm good for about one solid piece of creativity per day. So I try to produce one piece of content per day, whether that be a video or a blog post or something. I try to get, or a lesson for one of my courses. Much more than that, and I find that I just get frustrated and, the energy's not there and I'm not thinking clearly enough to produce really great content. So I focus on producing one thing a day, and then the rest of the time I am talking with other people, doing interviews, working on social media and things like that, and really just trying to interact with people. One of the things that's really important as a blogger is to make genuine friendships and connections with other bloggers and other people who are doing things online. I'm here in the middle of the Pacific coast of Mexico, and there aren't a whole lot of people in the town that I'm in who even know what Twitter is or care about it. And so it's important for me, partly because of the travel schedule, to meet people. But also, if you want to build a popular blog, you really have to understand that visitors don't come out of thin air. It's not as if you publish content and then magically, people find out about it and start coming. The people that you want to read your blog already hang out somewhere else online. And so your job is to figure out where the people who are most likely to enjoy your content are already spending time, and then work to figure out ways to get in front of those audiences. And one of the best ways you can do that is by interacting with other bloggers, trying to strike up friendships with people that you're genuinely interested in, genuinely feel connected to. And then eventually those friendships and relationships will pay off in, social media mentions. Sometimes people will link to you. They'll ask to interview you, all kinds of things like that. So, and the benefit is, the side benefit is that it's all fun. Like you mentioned, we chatted it up on Twitter, and that's all fun. I enjoy having these conversations, but then they also result in mutual benefit. You're interviewing me, which is great because it introduces you to your audience. And then, of course, when this interview goes up, I'll be happy to tell the world about it as well. So it works out, and then I get to meet somebody new, and sometimes those connections become really deep friendships. I actually have a number of people who are also bloggers who I'm very close to now, people that I meet in person on a regular basis, that I hang out with and consider my closest friends.
On a non-business related note, just because you're so great at creating a brand and making it personal, I think that's such a stark contrast with being in a corporate job. I was a marketing director. You have a job where your job really is to sort of a lot of the time not say the wrong thing, represent the company well. You are a vehicle for their message and for their product or their brand. And one of the most liberating parts, and one of the reasons that I wanted to do this blogging series, was to show my friends that there's the possibility for it to turn into money or for it to turn into a career. But there's also this insanely therapeutic experience, and I don't mean therapeutic in the boring sense, but therapeutic in this very invigorating sense of getting to be yourself and put that out there and watch people respond to it. And there's also some challenging parts of that. The criticism that comes in, or having to live with what you put out there to thousands of people and then they see and you can never escape it. How do you think that transition what do you think that's done for you personally, moving from a job to this?
Yeah, it's changed my life. I mean, there's no question about it. I like I said, I spent a decade or so in the corporate world and just felt like I had to force myself to get work done. I had to force myself to try to care a little bit about the mission that the corporation had. And I spent so much time in that world watching, 99% of my colleagues not give a crap about what they were working on. And also, like you said, it feels like you're always handcuffed in terms of it's not as if you're trying to do good. A lot of times it's that you're trying not to do bad when you're in that environment. And when I started a blog, of course, I was timid about it. I didn't know exactly how much of myself to reveal, how much I wanted to reveal. But more and more, I realized that the more I connect with people on a personal level, and the more I reveal my best self, not necessarily my true self. I don't want to share all of the warts and things that people don't necessarily want to see, but just to try to be the best person I can be when I have these connections with other people. The more that I do that, the faster my business grows, and the more connections I make, and the more fun I have, and the more fulfilled I feel as a person. And I think that's the advantage that we have in operating small independent businesses, and it's an advantage that you shouldn't overlook. I see some people who come from the corporate world and they start a blog and they act like a robot, like they did when they were with a corporation on their blog, and no surprise, their blog doesn't grow because they're not talking like a human. And when you're in this world where you can choose to get information from people who are fun and entertaining and genuine, or you can get information from people who are trying to write articles for search engine optimization and to do things that aren't really trying to make genuine human connections. It's just such a stark contrast that the people who choose to connect on an emotional level and a human level win out every time online. And once you embrace that, I think that's when you really start to grow and really start to just feel better about what you're doing.
And is that how you made, I think then there's that transition from your personal blog to this business, you started to grow Think Traffic and trying to convert that 1% and move them over without it being cheapened or without people feeling like you're selling them. And I guess that's just a fine balance or an authenticity, or how did you bridge that gap? So you did a great job.
Yeah. I mean, the sales aspect of being online is tough. I mean, nobody enjoys selling, right? It makes you feel kind of weird, unless maybe you're a natural salesman. I'm not.
Not me.
So it definitely can make your skin crawl. And also, what you'll find is that when you start looking into how to create products and how to sell things online, there's just so much sleazy information out there with all of these strategies and tactics and things to to influence people and to get them to buy things. You have to decide with your business what of those things is worth using, what isn't worth using. And I think you'll find that actually a lot of that stuff that people say is, you have to do this, isn't really required. If you look online and you see people like Chris Guillebeau, who is just so genuine and produces such great content and is able to make a living without really being pushy in terms of sales, or Leo Babauta from Zen Habits, you watch guys like this and you realize that the genuineness and the care that they have for their audience and the personality that they bring to their projects, that actually helps them to grow their project much bigger so they don't have to sell as hard. I think some people feel like, well, I have to be really pushy in terms of sales, but when you do that, that keeps your audience small because people don't like that. They don't like the pushiness. And so there is a balance there, and you kind of have to figure out what's right for you, what's right for your market, and realize that you don't necessarily have to do what the marketing people say. You can experiment, and that's the key, I think, to growth, is experimenting and trying new things and seeing what works, and then running with what works and cutting out what doesn't. Awesome.
I think that covers all my questions. I'm so honored to get a chance to talk to you, and I don't want to say pulled off, you have carefully constructed something that is very hard to do, and you've done an amazing job doing it, and you still have stayed so kind and approachable and eager and so humble, and so it's inspiring and it's amazing to watch, and I'm so excited to have you on my site. I'm so excited.
Thank you. And I know it sounds cliche, but really it's all about perseverance in the end. You're going to have a lot of obstacles along the way, and how you deal with those obstacles is going to define whether or not you're successful and what your project turns into. And so you just have to realize, like, the things that you go through, the days where you feel like nobody's listening, or you feel like you put all this effort into something and it just didn't turn out like you wanted to, that happens to everyone. I went through half a dozen projects that failed over the past 3 years, and I just kept I kept the idea of winning the war and not necessarily winning every battle. That's just kind of how it goes. And if you believe in what you're doing and you enjoy it, then I think you're going to be just fine. So keep that in mind.